Hey everybody. This is a quick video I just want to make because this was a thought I had today and I want to share it with people. I think it's really useful, helpful, and I want other people to remember it and really challenge themselves to be honest with themselves. So, the thought I had today was this. I was thinking of, back in the Old Testament because I'm a Christian. I was thinking about back in the Old Testament, the verses, where it's like, God is a man of war in Exodus 15:3, or the verse in Hosea chapter 11, where, it says like, God is not a man. And, a lot of Jewish people use that to try to diminish Jesus because they'll read it just as, the literal reading, God can't be a man. So Jesus, therefore, can't be the son of God. Jesus can't be God. And the problem is, the fact of the matter is, the way that verse in Hosea is written is, God is not a man. He's comparing his decisions and his spirit and his being to mankind's spirit, mind, and being. He's not saying physically it's impossible for God to be a man. And I don't think people should read the verse that way. I mean, really, do we think that God was implying that it's impossible for God to be in the form of a man when Genesis itself tells us we are made in the image of God? So, in what way are we made in the image of God? We don't know the extent of that, but surely we could be, made in the image of God to the exact detail of God is what we would consider a man in form. But the more important thing that I wanted to point out is the reason that the Jewish people have trouble with those verses. It all boils down to pride. So some people are going to deny the Messiah until they die because of one verse, because of pride. Because they're going to read that verse with such pride, they're going to say, man, God can't be man. God can't be man. Story over. The New Testament is false. I believe in, Hashem, the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that's it. Jesus isn't the Son of God. And, it's sad that people will be that stubborn because pride is, just like we read in Proverbs, pride comes before a downfall. Pride comes, a haughty spirit will lead us, down. And we can see that with multiple examples within the scriptures of kings and other spots. But what I'd like to do more so is just give people a thought experiment to really challenge themselves, because a lot of us will say, well, I'm not prideful. That applies to other people. I'm an objective, logical, pragmatic person, and I'm not the person that falls into that category of being prideful. Okay, let's test that. Let's see if you're a prideful person, or maybe you're not even what we would consider prideful according to, standards of, comparing yourself to other people and being prideful. But maybe you're just a human being, and maybe it's just there's some things in the way we think that aren't perfect, and we're all susceptible to these things. So, just for a thought experiment, this isn't what I truly believe, but I want people to do it for a thought experiment to test if they're prideful. Believe God is a frog right now. Believe God does everything that the Bible says he does, that every single act, every single action, every single thought, every single characteristic, the same love, the same mercy, the same strength, power, you name it, authority in every way. And the Bible is exactly the same. But when you get to heaven, if you're blessed enough to get there, God is a frog. Or whatever. Maybe you love frogs, so this won't make you challenged to see if you'd be prideful or not, or if you are prideful or not. Say God's an ant. Say God's an elephant. Say God's any animal you want. And literally don't just lie to other people and say, well, I'd be fine with it. I'll look past it. Literally test your own heart and see if it really does affect how you view what God is. And question, well, where in the Bible have I gotten the exact answer of what God looks like? Besides that, we are made in the image of God. Where else have I gotten that? And you don't get it anywhere. You just get anthropomorphic things about God's right hand, God's arm, God's heart, so God's mind. So you really don't know what God looks like already by reading the Bible, unless you want to really, take the one verse in Genesis that says we are made in the image of God to know that, that means God is a man and we are in the image of him. Exactly. So either way, if you're trying to deny Jesus with that Hosea verse, you have a serious problem, because either God is made as a man or your pride is causing you to stumble on that verse. But I don't want this to be just like, directed towards Jewish people and their view of Jesus. I want us all to think about it, Christian alike. If you're a Christian too and you believe in Jesus, think about if God was a frog. Like, would that make you worship God any less? I mean, none of us will say yes right off the top of our heads, because we'll defend the fact that we're righteous and it's our own pride saying that. But in the back of our minds, we're thinking, well, I will feel a little foolish in a way. I'm worshiping a frog. But that frog does everything that God does, and that's God. So why? Why would you feel that way? Why would you feel foolish at all? What would there be to feel foolish about, besides the fact that you just didn't understand what God was in his image and his form? So this is a thought experiment that I thought of today, and it really showed me how much pride I have. So don't think I'm exalting myself, and don't think I'm immune to these human perceptions, these human things. You find out God's a frog, an ant, an elephant, and immediately your pride gets a little shaken, and you feel a little different about what you worship the whole time, when you shouldn't at all. You should not at all, because everything the divine being did is the same. So why would you care what it looked like? And what it shows us too is it speaks to our psychology of human beings do a lot with their eyes. Our eyes make us judge things. We see things and we prejudge everything. That's just how we're trained. And part of that is because it's our survival. We have to prejudge everything. If we see something really big back in the day when we're more primitive, it was more dangerous to us. If we see something that has some sort of, sharp object on it, a horn or claw or whatever it is, a sword, a gun, we're trained to survive by our prejudging what we see with our eyes. But at the same time, we have to realize seeing with our eyes is the flesh. We have to look past that. So when we have to think about God, we have to be ready to abandon what we see and hear. Why do you think in the New Testament, God says to us, forever seeing, but never seeing, forever hearing, but never hearing, and only if they would turn with their hearts and I would heal them? That verse there has hundreds of meanings, thousands of meanings, millions of meanings. I'm not saying it has one meaning, but one meaning it can mean is that people see with their eyes just like a primitive human being, and they hear with their ears just like a primitive human being. And they don't actually see and they don't actually hear. And what they need to do is they need to turn with their hearts to God. So, like I said, if God is a frog, would you worship him exactly the same? And, be honest with yourself. How do you react to that question? Most of us would feel weird. We would have a moment. We would have to really work it through in our brains and then come to the conclusion that no, I should worship him exactly the same. But let's be honest with ourselves. Our immediate reaction within the first 3 seconds, all of us, feel like, well, wait a minute, I made a mistake in a way, when you shouldn't feel that way at all. So that tells us that we're not seeing with our eyes, guys. We're not. So let's work on that in all ways. Don't judge man. Don't judge by race. Don't judge by, age. Don't judge by disability. Like I said, you never know, like in Hebrews 13, verses 1 and 2, I believe, but it's right in the beginning of Hebrews 13. I'm pretty sure it's verses 1 and 2. God tells us many of us have been sent angels. And, if you treat people with kindness, you never know if you're doing it to an angel. Remember that, because this lesson here will tell you that you'll never know what form an angel will be in. It may be a child. It may be a disabled person. It may be that homeless person that you pass by that asks you for a penny. It may be anybody. Don't ever prejudge. What God does is beyond human understanding and wisdom. God may be judging you with an animal. God may be sending you a harmed animal, to see if you'll care for it. You never know. God can come in all forms. So, I fail these tests too, guys. I'm working on it. I fail these tests too. Don't think I don't. But what I'm trying to do is learn from my mistakes after I fail them. So I hope everybody else can do the same thing. And I hope everybody can see that, the main thing that's, standing in our way is our own egos and our own pride and what we think things are. It's hard to shape, it's hard to reshape your ideas. Once we have an idea in our head that this is the way it is, none of us like to change because if we do that, we're admitting we aren't perfect. And if we do that, we admit that we were wrong. And it's hard to say an apology to people, and it's hard to admit you're wrong to people. And granted, we all can get to that point, and we all want to think that we're capable of doing it. But when we are even capable of doing it, we always do have a resistance at first. None of us that are capable of doing it just immediately do it. We don't just do it without, any hesitation, which is what we truly should be doing. You shouldn't hesitate at all. You shouldn't try to make the argument subjective at all. You should try to remain as objective as possible. You shouldn't have to, have any sort of 1% bias, leaning in your direction. It should be 50-50, just objective truth. But, yeah, man, I don't know. I thought this was really helpful. I hope it helps Jewish people that are challenging themselves if Jesus is the Messiah. I hope it helps, all of us if we're prideful in any way, if we're looking at other people and judging other people. I hope it helps everybody realize, what God's form, shape, image is still somewhat of a mystery to us, and, you could take one verse and decide what you want to. You could take the image of God verse, or you could take the fact that God was in, all different forms in Exodus. You could take all sorts of things. You can't say God wasn't in that fire. God wasn't in that cloud in Exodus. So God could be all things. And, we should be aware of that. But don't be like, a short-sighted person and don't treat other people and judge other people because of their appearances either. And, remember this. And I hope this helps somebody. And I love you guys. And God bless. Thank you.